It was strange to think that in all the years I'd known Miss Mortimer, I never once entered her house through the front door. I felt like a trespasser as I crossed her overgrown lawn, looking for an unlocked door, a half-open window, anything that would allow access to the quiet little house at the end of the street. Outwardly, there was no sign that anything was wrong. I could see Miss Mortimer's study through the big bay window, and while it was dark and quiet, I was relieved to see that there was no signs of any cobwebby rags or glass-eyed animal skulls. Circling around the house, I finally found what I was looking for, a cat flap on the back door. It was much too small for an adult, but at 9 years old, I was just scrawny enough to pull myself through. "Who goes there?" Miss Mortimer's voice boomed inside of my head when I was halfway inside the cat flap. The air felt suddenly thicker, like invisible hands were pushing me back outside. It's just me," I cried out. Suddenly, I was pulled the rest of the way through the kitchen, but Miss Mortimer was nowhere to be seen. I made a beeline for the half-open door to the study up ahead, and breathed a sigh of relief when everything in the cozy room was exactly as I remembered. The plants on the bookshelves, in need of watering, the shattered teapot on the floor. A hunch made me look on the other side of the door, where I found another chalk circle. My heart was in my throat when I put my hand inside of it and turned the doorknob, but it only led back to my bedroom. That gave me an idea. I grabbed Miss Mortimer's red notebook from where it lay on her desk, flipped to a blank page, and copied down the symbol exactly. Now I had a way back to my room from anywhere else that I might need to go. At least, that's what I told myself. With the notebook and marker in hand, I searched the room for more clues to Miss Mortimer's disappearance. Several of those big old-fashioned books were missing, as well as the handmade broom that was usually hanging from the wall. Finally, I noticed it. A circle of symbols written in lipstick on the floor-to-ceiling mirror. Fascinated, I touched the center of the circle and felt the floor fall out from beneath my feet. I was falling through an empty sky, a sky the color of mirrored light. I crashed into something hard and reflective. It felt like some sort of curved bridge, very, very high up. I crawled on my hands and knees to the unprotected edge and looked down. Arches, fractals, other forms that should have been impossible. Insane silver architecture stretched as far as I could see. A strong wind whipped gray clouds through the weirdly reflective sky, threatening to push me over the ledge. I pulled back from the dizzying drop and wiped my sweaty palms on my jeans to remind myself I wasn't dreaming. One false step, and I wouldn't have to worry about how I was going to make it home. I crawled through the cathedral tall corridor to the end of the bridge. I didn't dare stand up until I was well inside of it. At least there were walls here, even if they were sort of mirror-like. I held the marker and Miss Mortimer's notebook to my chest like a protective amulet, telling myself not to be afraid. I was fine, and I could escape from this eerie, lifeless place at any time, provided that I copied those symbols exactly right. I had written them down in a hurry, but I hadn't made any mistakes. At least, I didn't think that I had. I realized that I was afraid to try and find out that I was wrong. I wanted to call out for Miss Mortimer, but the same instinct that had warned me to tiptoe in the spider thing's lair warned me to be silent here. There was no sound but the wind wailing through the weird mirrorscape outside, and no movement but my own gloomy reflection. Or was there? I got the oddest feeling that when I stopped walking, my reflection didn't stop at exactly the same moment. Instead, it came ever so slightly closer. No, that was impossible. It's just a trick of the light caused by all the weird angles in this place. It had to be. The vast corridor was getting narrower and narrower, and soon my reflection were close enough to touch, if they were my reflections at all. I don't remember my skin being so pale and colorless, or pulled so tightly across my skull. My eyes weren't inky black either. I ran. My reflection ran too. They pressed their identical hands against the mirrored walls, their hunger deepening as they closed in around me. I felt sure that at any moment they would reach through and pull me into the endlessly reflective hell on the other side. Then suddenly, I was out. The narrow corridor opened into an enormous chamber, strewn with wall-sized shards of an enormous broken mirror, and there, in the center of it, stood Miss Mortimer. "It's you!" She spun to face me. Her old-fashioned black dress, wispy brown hair, and bright green eyes were exactly as I remembered. "How on earth did you find your way here?" I could have cried of joy. I found her, the one adult I trusted, who'd always been there for me, and then I glanced at the mirror shards around us. The creature reflected there was not Miss Mortimer. Its movements were the same as the woman reaching out to hug me, but that was where the similarities ended. It was a starving, silver, faceless thing with a mouthful of teeth as jagged as shattered glass. The horrible image grinned at me from every angle except one. I could see the real Miss Mortimer inside one of the shards, knocking desperately from inside it, trying to warn me. I slipped beneath the arms that reached out for me and ran to her. Miss Mortimer was pointing to something in my hand. Her red notebook. I pushed it up against Miss Mortimer's mirror and watched in amazement as it passed through to the other side. She flipped it open, recited some soundless words, and stepped back through the looking glass. The shard that had been holding her shattered, and the illusion dropped away from the ghastly thing in front of us. Miss Mortimer tossed me the notebook, and I knew right away what she wanted me to do. I hid behind a shard that was twice my height and began frantically scribbling the circle of symbols that could lead us home. Behind me, flashes of light and heat, cold and darkness. Miss Mortimer and the mirror monster fought each other with words that made my head ring and my nose bleed. I knew that they were speaking those strange symbols aloud, using them to bend reality somehow. Kids my age would call magic. Meanwhile, I was busy trying to get us home. "It's done!" I screamed over my shoulder. With the last symbol drawn, I placed my hand in the circle and felt myself pulled through. Suddenly, I was flying into my bedroom, crashing onto the floor, and Miss Mortimer was right behind me. She got to her feet and brushed off her dress, exhausted but alive. Looking around my shabby bedroom, it would have been hard to believe that the nightmarish place we'd just returned from ever existed at all. If it wasn't from the blood trickling from my nostrils and the mirror dust in my hair. "What the hell's going on up there?" my father roared over the din of the television. "I just fell," Miss Mortimer replied in an uncannily perfect imitation of my voice. "Everything's fine." "God damn clumsy kid," I heard my mother mutter from the bathroom. She was getting ready for a cocktail party. "Can't you do something about them?" I begged Miss Mortimer. "There are some things even I can't fix." She ruffled my hair and smiled sadly. Before I could stop her, she took the marker from my hand, opened her notebook, and copied a new set of symbols onto the back of my door. After what happened on the other side of the mirror, the house at the end of the street isn't safe any longer, I'm afraid. I'm leaving tonight. For good. What? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After all I'd gone through, to put things back how they were, it wasn't fair. But you just got back. Why? It's a long story. Shall I tell you on the way? Miss Mortimer grinned. My jaw dropped. You don't have to come along, of course. If you do, you'll be leaving this place and everyone in it behind. Forever. Even if you want to see them again, it would be like they'd never known you. Are you sure you can live with that? Downstairs, I could hear the hum of my mother's hairdryer. My father crumpling a beer can and cursing when he missed his toss to the trash can. Miss Mortimer touched the circle of new symbols on the wall and looked back at me expectantly. Well, what do you say? I didn't say anything. I just grabbed Miss Mortimer's hand, and when she opened the door, I walked through with her to the other side. Hey there kids, it's me, MrCreepyPasta, and I want to tell you thank you so much for watching tonight's video if you're watching on YouTube. Thank you so much for listening to tonight's podcast if you're listening on Spotify, and thank you guys for doing that thing where you subscribe, where you hit the bell, where you hit like, or you leave a little comment at the bottom or wherever you can leave comments at. I don't know, I don't use Spotify that much. And finally, I want to give a huge thank you to everybody who supports me on Patreon. This past year has been rough. I've been gone for quite a while trying to get things organized for my own life, and Patreon subscribers, you guys who subscribe everywhere, this has kept me afloat in turbulent waters. So I want to give a very special thank you to Jordan Humble, Diana Kraus, Disciple, Strategy Wolf Emoji, SullyMan, Brandon Mendoza, BrimstonePandemonium, Caltuna, William Wellington, Scruffy the Janitor, Brenna LaQueda Canizales, Smiley the Psychotic, Jjenna, Dante Kinkade, SimbasBloodyMojo, Mephistopheles, CursepoxPrimarch, M, Jesus Cornejo, Yarghoul, VerbalHorror, Amber Clark, J. Kearns, Mike, himbojerry, CrusaderChocobo, Corbin Dallas, Estebean, Seclude, Salty Surprise, Red Shadowcat, Turtleman, Cryolinian, Mr. Marcus Blitz, Dirt Diver 030, Voice of Sand, Psychomel, Melted Lake, Tali Sue, William King, Sashi Suzaku, Croconut 509, Stricken, Freddy Krueger, Hades Nephew, Acid System, Sky Harbor, Nico Kyle, The Ginger Bros, Aaron Stormcrow, Daniel Polson, and Corey Kenshin. I really appreciate your support, and I cannot thank you enough.